Hello, hello, here today in a brand new ship hot off the printing press. The Tier 6 Premium British carrier, the Ark Royal of the Hunt for the Bismarck fame. We're on the map North and the mode is Domination. We're in 6 to 8 matchmaking, so the hardest matchmaking you can expect to face. And we're against a Ranger. Now, matchmaking wise, a lot of pretty annoying ships, especially given I'm in a rather unique ship, but we'll get onto that during the review. So first off, the Ark Royal, Tier 6 carrier, thinly armored like all Tier 6 carriers, and does fairly good speed at 30 knots. Hit point wise, she's pretty average, but where she differs of course is in her planes. Now her plane squadrons are fairly large for the tier. You'll note my 9 plane rocket plane squadron, which is rivaled only by the Ryuho's 8 plane Zero squadron. These are the Blackburn Skuas, and if you look down here, you'll note that they're tier 5 aircraft, so they're a bit squishier than the Sea Hurricanes that you'll find on her tech tree tier mate, the Furious. In exchange, you get 9 planes in a squadron. Now the rockets themselves hit for 1500 HE alpha, that's the same as the Furious rockets. However, each plane only carries 4, unlike the 6 carried on each Sea Hurricane. This is made up for by the fact that there's 3 planes per attack flight, so you do manage to equal it out. They still have 26mm of penetration, which is actually quite decent for tier 6. Now we find the Atlantas and the Tokau. Not interested in ramming my tier 5 planes into that. You'll note my planes are turning rather slowly. This is because, of course, they are tier 5. Their top speed is only about 150 knots with the engine boost consumable active, and without the engine boost they are rather meager. So we're going to take it nice and slow, take a look around, see what we find. The rocket planes aren't particularly a selling point, but we do manage to find the only DT in this game, which is rather important. Any damage you put onto him is going to stick. I have 9 planes to ram through this A.A. Maybe I can get 1 hit off. Oof. You can see there, the reticle gets nice and focused, and I do get a 3k hit, just going to recall immediately. They're milling about over there. I will relaunch with the torpedo bombers. Now the torpedo bombers, as you can see on your screen, are biplanes. This is in fact a tier 4 plane found on the Hermes, the fairy swordfish of Hunt for Bismarck fame. You can see it's a big squadron, 9 aircraft, and even after launching I have 14 total, so I have quite a bit of a reserve, and they regenerate at a fairly good pace of just under a minute per plane. Speed-wise, they're very slow, of course, tier 4 aircraft. I'm hovering just above 100 knots of speed without the engine boost, and I can boost up to about 120. Yeah, so just, a little more than that actually. Just about 136 knots of speed with engine boost. We spot the rest of their team over there. I'm gonna move my carrier away from the majority of the masses. You'll note that large 12.6 kilometer detection circle. Gonna protect my Farragut from the Ranger on the way in. Try to do so without tagging the fighter, of course. Now at this angle in New Orleans is going to be the best target. He has launched a fighter, but I have 9 aircraft and he can only intercept 3. And he's at a good angle. Now these are the British torpedo bombers, so they have the same converging pattern and the short arm time. No heal, of course, I'm a tier 6 carrier. They have pretty good alpha, 5200. And they do 40 knots with torpedo acceleration. Note they're a nice converging pattern, however the heavy AA means I'm going to get most of my squadron interdicted here. But I do hit 3 torpedoes and get a nice solid 14,000 whack. Obviously I probably should have pre-dropped there, but I was busy talking, so I may have missed out on doing that. So slow plane, pretty good damage though, honestly, especially for a tier 6. It's probably one of the higher torpedo alphas per strike wave. I'm going to relaunch with the level bombers. These are a bit different. So the reticle is quite a bit smaller than the Furious', as you'll see. And these are smaller little bomblets. So they hit for a maximum HE damage of 2300 alpha, and 8 per aircraft means that you drop 24 at once. In exchange for this small reticle though, however, you do have a lower fire chance at 14% per bomb, and only 19 millimeters of penetration. So this is a particular problem when you're bottom tier. I spotted a Farragut, so I'm going to go after him. Because 19 millimeters is basically just superstructure on battleships. So when you're going after battleships, which is normally what you use the level bombers for on the Furious, you don't really pen them anywhere except the superstructure. I'll demonstrate on the Nelson over here. It's considering the Bismarck, but if I can afford to avoid the tier 8, I'll avoid the tier 8. Sending tier 4 planes into a tier 8 is not exactly ideal. They're slightly squishier than the Furious's level bomber. Arm to strike using the mountain to prevent A from trimming as many planes as possible. Now if I hit the guns at all, these are not going to pen. He's moving backwards fairly slowly, however, so gets a nice splash and sees the 3 pens and 10 shatters. Gonna circle around, trying to avoid the North Carolina on that side. Note their exceptionally slow speed on the strike. Again, I'm gonna try and aim for the superstructure. The small reticle, however, does mean you get some nice precise clusters. And I do manage to relight a fire, and 6 pens hits another 2k. Let's see if I can fly this over the mountain. And if I do, I should be able to F out. Oh, okay, I can see that my carrier is getting awfully close. Remember, I have 12.6 kilometers of ejectability, and I'm kind of slow at turning. So I'm going to relaunch with the torpedo bombers. I'm looking at that Arizona. Tier 6 battleship. A fairly light AA. I can arm to drop fairly far out because I have the torpedo bomber's module, so I get 15 seconds of attack time. Note the slow approach speed. However, the Arizona is a standard type Pennsylvania class battleship, so minimal lead time is necessary. I re-establish contact with the A.K.A. 3 torpedo hits and 1 flooding. I'm going to use the short British arm time again, and take advantage of the A.K.A.'s rather poor AA suite. He's turning, however. I'm going to lead him by a little bit. See if I can't nail him with 2. Oh, only 1, but I can break a gun. It's definitely inconveniencing for him. Note the tier 8 with whatever pretty poor AA is struggling to take down 1 tier 4 aircraft, which is kind of funny. Charles Martel, on the other hand, getting this close is not kind of funny. So I'm gonna relaunch my planes. Now, Charles Martel, high tier cruiser, does have 25 millimeters of plate, and more importantly, he's with New Orleans, an American cruiser, which is likely to be quite well armored. However, a lot of my teammates are not exactly in a position conducive to being that helpful. Plane launching a fighter for some reason, which is rather odd. Haven't been paying attention to the enemy ranger, maybe he's been striking them. Charles Martel launching another fighter, on the other hand, is going to be annoying. It'll trim 3 planes. So again, I have to go for the superstructure because I don't pen him. He's going fairly fast, but note that the drop time is actually quite good. And I do get a 5k pass as I rake his superstructure. He gets too close to the Helena, so the Helena's AA does wipe out much of his escorting fighter. Last gasp, refilling my boost bar here. However, the Charles Martel does kill the Helena on my team, and I'm unable to penetrate the AA. Looks like the New Mexico might be AFK, so I'm gonna be on the run shortly. We are still up points and up ships, but we're down caps now, and this is gonna be a complicated one. Where are you? Nelson. I don't know about players who congratulate themselves. I'm pretty sure he's AFK, so these guys are gonna victimize him. I'm gonna arm my drop out quite far. The planes are not stealthy. They're British torpedo bombers. The converging pattern, however, does mean I can force him to make some decisions. I turn north towards the northern border because I don't want to overlap into the New Orleans A.A. aura. I do straddle him, however, with the converging torps. Gonna arm out here and go for a lead. He's fairly fast. Looks like he has engine boost running. So I have to get an intercept vector at 40 knots. He doesn't, however, manage to quite take me on. And I do hit him with all 3 torpedoes. Now I'm on the run and it's spotted by an A.K.A. I'm fairly unarmored unless he hits the Citadel belt, and you'll see there he's starting on me with some AP. Gonna try and angle as best I can, but I am very thinly armored. Gonna request some assistance from my teammates because I'm in trouble. Rockets have 26mm of penetration, remember, so they can pen the 25mm extremities plating of the cow. Make sure you arm early on the turn so you get a nice tight reticle and attack before he gets to the midsection. I do get a Confederate. I'm gonna use my torpedo bombers even though I only have 4 left from repeatedly abusing them, because this is the highest alpha weapon. If you remember that first 15,000 strike on the New Orleans back over here, they do hit fairly hard. Using my speed boost as best I can, but even boosted, the tier 4 planes really have not that much health. Alright, so I've flown the strike in and I need to move my carrier forward, so I'm gonna temporarily jump up and maybe, I think I'm actually gonna divert targets for the Charles Martel due to the angling. Come on, Ark Royal. Come on, girl. Get yourself going. Carrier is moving rather slowly for my tastes. The cow continues to harass me, but we do have a respectable 80k damage already from just farming lightly armored targets. They are certainly putting the hurt on. Oh, they relight a fire. It might kill me, I'm not sure. But this is probably my best squadron left anyway. So they do dispatch me after chasing me down because of the collapse of the other flank. Charles Martel moving at speed, so I launched quite early, get 2k on the pass with 6 bomblets. Remember, each bomb only hits for about 550. I'm gonna pop my speed boost, make sure we traverse through, and then last gas refreshes my speed boost again. Let's see if I can't light some more damage. And my final pass does hit 2 more bomblets. So our damage total is going to sit at a conservative 84,000, but I would say that's honestly not bad at all. Especially for a light carrier such as the Ark Royal. And that was the first game. We did get dispatched because, as you saw, our large detection radius and lack of access to concealment module did get us rather spotted. We got hunted down by a 36-knot ARP to cow, also known as an A.K.A. clone, and a 40-knot Charles Martel. But it's fine. My teammates did win the fights elsewhere. So we should clean it up. Now while we wait, let's exit over to port. And we can talk about the other tier 6 carriers. So at tier 6, right now the Ark Royal is the only premium carrier at tier 6. So I'm looking immediately at her tech tree tier mate, the Furious. So the Ark Royal has 14 aircraft on deck of each type. In comparison, the Furious has 9 torpedo bombers, 9 attack aircraft, and 9 level bombers. Now the 250-pound bomb on the level bombers hits for 4,700 damage, and has 32mm of penetration. Obviously a much more versatile weapon with 32mm of penetration. This means you do penetrate up to tier 8 battleship extremities plating. it also has a much higher 27% fire chance versus 19 on the Ark Royals. The planes are also faster. They cruise at 122 knots, which is close to the 136 boosted speed of the Swordfish, and they boost up to 157. However, in exchange, they drop a lot less bombs, so it's 6 bombs in a payload, as you can see, which means you drop 12 bombs per pass. In comparison, the Ark Royal drops 24. And because munitions density is very important in this game, dropping more smaller bombs is actually better than dropping fewer bigger bombs, especially because splash radius on bombs is not that large. So the Ark Royal will be more consistent in terms of getting bombs to hit, but its bombs will penetrate much less in terms of viable targets. We do win. Just quickly jump back into the game, and I'll continue on to the Furious after. Quick game. So 84, just shy of 85,000 damage with 10 torpedo hits, 44 bomblet hits, of which 20 shattered, keep in mind, so about 24 real hits. 2 incaps, 3 fires, 1 flooding, 1 defended ribbon, and 10 spotting ribbons, and 19 rocket hits. 2 shatters on the rockets. Team score-wise, an unimpressive 1590, but given we're bottom tier, this is really not that bad. If I jump over to damage, you'll note that torpedoes are the most potent munition because of the high torpedo alpha, 5200 per torpedo. And this is followed by the bomblets, which can be effective if you pick your right targets, and rockets. However, much of my damage here, you'll note, comes from floods and fires. Charles Martel, mostly bomblets, you would think, but then you get back to the fact that he took 3 torpedoes and took 12,000. New Orleans also took 3 torpedoes, taking 13,000 due to his lower torpedo protection. A.K.A. took torpedoes and rockets. Note that A.K.A. has a pretty noticeable torpedo bulge, which reduces quite a bit of torpedo damage, especially for a cruiser. So you'll note the rather low torpedo hit. But jumping back, overall, the Furious has the probably better level bomber because it's just able to hit more targets. However, the Ark Royal is still definitely very consistent. Torpedo bomber wise, the Furious's best squadron is the torpedo bomber. The Ark Royal's best squadron is the torpedo bomber. So the Barracuda, quite a bit tankier than the Ferry Swordfish, which comes in at about 1800, I think. Yeah, just under 1800 per plane versus 2300 almost on the Ferry Barracuda. This is, of course, the difference of 2 tiers. The torpedo damage of 5200, however, is very similar. It is in fact identical, so the munition is the same even though the plane carrying it is much worse. And as a result, because you launch 3 at once instead of 2 at once, you end up with higher torpedo alpha per strike wave than the Furious. Now you might not get all 3 of your drops off, but the Furious doesn't usually get all 4 of its drops off either with its torpedo bombers. And in exchange, you get a shorter restoration time of just under a minute, whereas the Furious has 85. And again, with the Hurricanes, you get the same trend. So as I mentioned during the commentary, you shoot the same number of rockets, however it's over 3 planes instead of 2. The planes themselves are inferior in health and speed, but not by a huge margin, and the Furious rockets aren't exactly great. And whereas I would rate the Ark Royal's rockets as really not that bad. You can see here just a shy under the Hurricane's health, because these are tier 5 planes rather than tier 4 like the Swordfish. And they do the same damage. Now, one important thing to note is that the Furious does have pretty good level bombers against carriers. So the 32mm bomb, striking across the nice flat unarmored surface of most tier 6 carriers, is able to penetrate easily. So 21mm of penetration, so hitting a Furious, you penetrate. If I go over to the Ranger, which has a firm 25mm deck throughout, the Furious is able to penetrate this quite easily. Same goes for the Ranger striking with her dive bombers, or the Ryuho striking with her dive bombers. I don't currently have the Ryuho in my inventory. I sold it to make some space, but just for posterity, I will pull her up. Ryuho. Oh, okay. Interestingly enough, the Ryuho has a uniform 13mm deck, so this is important to keep in mind. This is... 6 to 30mm, huh? Where's the 30mm strip? The belt. Okay, well, you know what? I'm gonna buy this just to make sure. Let me just buy a Ryuho and get to the top hall. Alright, let me just buy the top hall. Make sure the armor doesn't change. Okay, good. So, Ryu has a uniform 13mm deck, which is much thinner. This is important, of course, because if we go back to the Ark Royal, she only has 19mm of penetration. Which means she can hit her with her cluster bomblets, or the level bombers. So this means that you can use these bombers against another Ark Royal and against the Ryuho, but not against a Furious or a Ranger. So those are the stats. Just to flicker over to the modules I used during that game, using Airgroups Modification 1, Aircraft Engines Modification 1, Torpedo Bombers Modification 1 for the extra 5 seconds, and then Torpedo Bomber Health. As I mentioned, the Torpedo Bombers are probably her best squadron, definitely the highest alpha per pass, so that's what you should be emphasizing. Captain-wise, I'm using my standard Audacious Captain. So we go with Air Supremacy, into Torpedo Acceleration, into Aircraft Armor, and then Survivability Expert. After these core 9 points, you're free to do whatever else you want. Now I opt for Survivability or Concealment Expert, and follow it up with Plane Speed, then take Last Gasp, and I take Demolition Expert. Demolition Expert is the most optional of these skills. If you choose not to take Demolition Expert, then you can opt for Improved Engine Boost, an extra fighter, and you take maybe Engine, maybe Preventative Maintenance, or Priority Target. One of the two. They're both pretty whatever skills. But yeah, this is Release Ark Royal. She seems pretty fair, but she's also pretty darn fun. Definitely powerful in the right hands. So why not take her for another spin? Hopefully the queue is kind to me and we get into a match fairly quickly so you don't have to stare at the screen for too long. Now we got a tier 6 to 8 game, so hopefully we can get an on tier game. And Matchmaker is kind to us. No such luck, but we are bottom tier again. This does happen with tier 6 premiums, so you do need to be careful of that. We're against a Ranger yet again. He's dived with an Iron Duke, which I would definitely not recommend because that's really bad for the Iron Duke player because now we have a tier 5 in a tier 8 game. So don't fail div in that direction. If you're brave in carriers like I am, you can div and bottom tier yourself, so div with some tier 7s in this case. If you're not afraid of facing tier 8s, but yeah, you should be careful. Now, this is an interesting game. There's an awful lot of destroyers, as you can see from the matchmaking, and the level bomber of the Ark Royal is actually excellent against destroyers. You saw the small ellipse, so compared to, say, using a Furious' level bombers against destroyers, it's much more precise. And because it drops 24 bomblets, it does some devastating damage if you can get them to connect. Now, destroyer-wise, the Mahans might prove some trouble if they have defensive fire, otherwise not really. The Cleveland is obviously a problem, North Carolina is obviously a problem, but having an abundance of destroyers in a carrier with what I would say are two fairly good squadrons against destroyers is a boon, for sure. So it looks like there's 1, 2, 2. He's protecting the one lone destroyer on this flank. Let's see if we can intercept before he reaches the safety. of the carrier fighter. We do find an ARP Miyoko, so that's just a Miyoko. Oh, we find the Cleveland, turn away immediately, not interested in that. So I'm going to turn into the Miyoko, but that's highly preferable compared to diving into a Cleveland, a dedicated anti-aircraft cruiser, at least when it comes against tier 5 and 6 planes. We do find one of the GDs. He's AFK? I don't really care. Maybe he's not AFK. But regardless, I'm jamming back on the engine boost. I'm going to send rockets his way and recall. Mahan there, Cleveland there, Iron Duke over there, so I go here. I do get spotted by the Ranger. Now remember, I only have 19mm of deck armor, so his Havars from his Wildcats are going to pen my deck armor, and it looks like he's making a pass on me with 6 out of 9 aircraft. Is that how many it has? It might actually have 8. We do shoot down some planes. The A is really not that bad on the Ark Royal at all. Fighter intercepts another one. We take 3,000, and in exchange we trim about 3 planes. Now I know I was talking about the excellent characters of the carpet bombers, so we'll bring those to bear soon. However, we're going to hit the Iron Duke first, but as we approach the Iron Duke, note that he's approaching a North Carolina, so we're going to pre-drop. Because I don't want to pass over the Iron Duke and meet the A.A. of the North Carolina. I want to just hit the Iron Duke once. And then evacuate, or in this case probably have these planes die. And not lose any further aircraft. Let's see if we can't ram these in. North Carolina's long range might trim some before we can launch, so he does trim some, but that's alright. Looks like he's turning in, so he might squash the torpedoes. Nope, we do connect 2 torpedoes. And are rewarded with what looked like 7k damage. So the Asashio shows up in the channel. Sorry about that ping. So let's go try out these level bombers versus the Asashio. Now during testing, she was considered to be slightly too potent against the destroyers, so dispersion was nerfed somewhat. But I'm told, not having tested extensively, that they remain quite potent, and given they drop 24 of these little bomblets, that wouldn't surprise me if they retain most of their potency. Similarly, British cruisers, which are very lightly armored, are also quite fragile against these little bomblets. I do want the Asashio nevertheless, but it's kind of tempting to get some defended ribbons. Nope, he smokes up though. The Grasp Bay is also covered in 19mm extremities. Oh. So Asashio shows up. Not a perfect drop. Do catch him on the end for 1500, which is actually not a bad drop at all. It's going to be easier for me to hit the Grasp Bay than to hit the Asashio, however, so we might have to come back for him. So I'm going to go make a run on the Grasp Bay instead, who also takes full damage. Get a nice side on, 6,000 on the Grasp Bay. My team is, wow, absolutely massacring these kids. So I'm gonna move up. There's a bugged torpedo moving to the edge of the map, which is interesting. Relaunching my swordfish. If the game's gonna be short, you gotta milk out as much damage as possible. Looks like he's gonna beach himself in front of my allies over there, so I would say that on average that is not great for your health and probably highly detrimental. Is he gonna manage to turn out though? If he manages to turn out, there might be something for us to pick up over here. New Mexico being harassed by the enemy. Nope, he's not gonna get away. He is dead. So we'll have to go after someone who's still alive. I do turn the Ranger away. Grasp Bay heading down the channel. Not sure if he beached, then I can hit. Oh, he did not beach, so I need to come around onto the other side because I brought torpedo bombers. Now the Grasp Bay does have well, not insignificant AA, but pretty poor AA. Oof. And you'll see there I hit some Grouch Bay flak, and the game ended. Wow. Well, that was an uneventful game. We didn't quite get to try out the level bombers against destroyers, unfortunately. And it's a bit of a waste of the boost, but it happens. What can you do? So very, very short game for just under 20k, however, which results in, of course, low base experience, but these kinds of stomps do occur. But the previous game was a pretty good example of what you can do. And we did get to at least demonstrate that when you get the bombs to drop onto armor that they do penetrate, such as the thinly armored Grouch Bay, they do a lot of damage. So yeah, and pretty uninspiring second game, but you can't always have them be nail biters. And that's the Ark Royal, the new Tier 6 Premium aircraft carrier, and I think she's a really fun one and also a really balanced one, unlike some other carriers that have been removed from the store. Enterprise! Anyway, with that, I hope you enjoyed. Cheers.